Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a very special episode featuring Dr. Deborah Stein on her celebration journey inside of Next Level Freedom. Dr. Stein, Debbie, introduce yourself to the group.
I'm Debbie Stein. I'm a pediatric nephrologist at an academic medical center. Started coaching 2.5 years ago.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so how did you find your way to coaching? What was that journey like?
So I was definitely working through some burnout, not really finding improvement uh, from the resources that were out there at the time. Had was still experiencing changes from COVID with our workflow, and was invited to hear Christina speak at our pathology grand rounds. And I listened and I started crying while you were speaking because I felt like you were talking to me and I had never met you. But everything you said, it was the first time it occurred to me that it wasn't just me and it wasn't just me thinking these things and feeling these things and wondering these things. And you hit on all these things, then that was the first time someone had said them out loud at a sort of semi-public forum about women in medicine.
I love that so much that a grand rounds can be personal. Like that's it's so easy for grand rounds to be very stuffy full of PubMeds, and I love that we met on that day. Do you remember? I know this was a while ago, but do you remember like any of the sentences that you could share with listeners who might be totally new to coaching?
Yes, I remember, may not be exact quotes, but I remember you said, life is 50-50. So if you're happy, more than
Mhm.
50% of the time, you're winning. We were not actually supposed to be 100% happy 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Um, I remember you saying, there's always a choice somewhere, and you can't see it when you're in the middle of things sometimes, but there's always a choice. And with coaching, we can help you see your choices. Um, and I remember you saying, and I love this, and I quote it now to our trainees, like, sometimes you just go to work because it's your job. And we were all told, when we were starting this medical journey that, every day might be magical and we're, stamping out disease and changing lives. But some days we just go and do work and it's not
Mhm.
as meaningful, and that's okay.
Mhm. I love that you shared that because at the beginning of my coaching journey too, I had this thought, oh, life is always supposed to be great. And so when one person yelled at me, I was devastated. So I found such relief in that there's always a choice, that life won't always be great, and we could just consider it a job. I love that you shared that. And then my what I want to add a little addendum is, I also am a student of coaching, so I have grow my skills. Today, what I would say, and just I want to leave a spectrum for those who are listening, is that I do for my clients, I love the idea of how could we get as close to 100% as possible. So coaching is such a paradox, but I'll say that I remember having this conversation. You, Debbie, was like, what if we could do so much better than
Mhm.
accepting a broken system? What if we could just find our way through it?
Mhm.
Choices through. Yeah. So I love that. I love that we get to grow together as
Me too.
client and coach.
Me too.
Okay, so tell me, um, lots of lots of coaching programs in the world. Thank goodness. We need as many as possible. But what particularly do you think you joined this program versus something else?
I think having it be geared more towards women in medicine was huge. The fact that there were women from all different types of medicine was really appealing to me. That it wasn't sort of just pediatrics or just OBGYN or just something,
Yeah.
because it really spoke to me and still does about how not alone we are and how it's actually not just one field or just one hospital or just one area. It's all of medicine is really hard and the systems are really hard. And hearing other people's perspectives makes you realize, like, well, it's not me. There's there's
Yeah.
there are things that don't work well.
Yeah.
But also that it's not ours to fix.
Yeah.
And the people who want to fix it can go up that ladder, and the people who um, aren't in that role, that's okay too. And um, So it appealed to me that there was sort of a big variety. I
Mm,
think it also actually really appealed to me that you weren't someone who had been coaching for 20 years because you had been in academic medicine recently. And I think a lot of the resources I had looked into were people who sort of either hadn't actually experienced academic medicine, um, as a younger woman or had left and were sort of so angry at it. Their advice
mm,
was just like, get out, just don't
mm.
do it anymore. And so
Okay.
I think the idea that you proposed of like, let's see how you can feel better. Let's see how you can get happier. Let's see what you really want was very appealing to me and sort of fit with what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for someone to say, just change your job or just quit medicine or just go back
Right.
to school or get a hobby.
Yeah.
Those things that feel, feel easy, I think, to say on paper or, on social media, but are actually not so easy to do.
Yeah. And why would you when you actually love what you do? You're very, very good at it. Your patients love you. Okay, I have to just, this was so my, I love what you just said. I want to just say it again for the listeners in a different way, just to emphasize it, because so many people will come in and be like, oh, this is just for pathologists. Christine was a pathologist. I'm like, well, wait a second. We have so many people who are
Well,
not in pathology. It's
yep,
probably like a minority. So I love that you highlighted that. And academic
yep,
nephrology, pediatrics, amazing example. And
yep.
I do think what I think it's so important to hire a coach who looks like us, who's been in the same generation, who like that's just so important to be able to say I've done this too, and here's what I found. And I think this surprises people too when they come in the program. They oftentimes I don't know where it comes from if they're talking with other coaches, but they come and think, you're going to have me leave medicine. I'm like, absolutely not. Most of our clients, 99% in the next level of freedom, stay. They just want to love their job again.
Yeah.
They just want to get their life back. So that's really the focus.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out like what you like and do more of that rather
Yeah.
than focusing on what you don't like and
Yeah.
understanding we all have parts of our job that are just the job part, but
Right.
realizing what you love makes it much easier to go back every day.
Oh, so good. Okay, so tell us what you love
Mhm.
and how you got to do more of that. How did coach help you with that?
Um, I love being with patients. I love patient care. And in all academics, I think there's often a push to do research and to do other things that sort of count for more currency. And in coaching, I really got the support for taking a step back and saying, okay, but which of those things make me happy? So,
Mm,
um, realizing that the institution is not going to reward me. No institution is going to sort of give me fulfillment. So where's my fulfillment come from?
mm,
If it's if it were from publishing papers, great, I can do that. But if it's not, I actually don't have to do that.
mm,
And I think feeling that safety and support of, oh, okay, I can actually say no to things and really focus on what I like doing and on my own celebrate that regardless of what an institution holds up as values is actually still going to be okay in medicine because ultimately someone has to take care of patients.
yeah.
So and I think in a lot of academic centers there's a focus on research and publishing, but at the end of the day there are patients and someone has to take care of them and not everyone wants to do that. So I
Mm,
think being able to
mm,
see that as a plus, even if it's not what typically gets people promoted or gets people more recognition in this system, was helpful. And really being able to accept that the system was not designed to reward people who, quote, just take care of patients, but the patients don't care about that. Going back to like, where do I get the joy from? Oh, from the patients and the families, you know, saying thank you, or even if they don't say thank you, but just walking out the door, or getting the right information when they could be getting the wrong information somewhere. Uh, all of that brings me joy at the end of the day, much more so than writing a paper or publishing something.
I think it's so powerful to have the ability to say no. And also, like what's even more like what's as equally as powerful is also the ability to have like intentional yeses.
Mhm.
Like to say yes to the clinical space, yes to the patient work when it's what you love. To give ourselves the permission to do that is so powerful. So tell us, as you said yes to things you loved, what does that look like in the world?
Um, I think there's much less resentment when you're saying yes to things that you want to do, and
Yeah.
realizing that it actually doesn't matter what value other people are putting on it. It matters the value I put on it.
Hmm.
If we're doing good things in the world, it doesn't really matter how other people are counting them up. Um,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
I think it allowed me to sort of be at peace with that happiness and be at peace with this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing, regardless of what it may say on promotion criteria or a handbook somewhere. What I'm supposed to be doing are the things that, give me joy and I am giving back.
Hmm.
So I think coaching has supported me with sort of that permission and made me realize that so many other women are feeling the same way.
Hmm.
Or maybe a different way, but in the same idea of like one thing is more important to them, but it's not what was
Yeah.
prioritized maybe by an institution.
Yeah. So what's interesting, I love that. It's so powerful. And then also as from the coach, watching your journey, things that stand out in my mind of what seeing you say yes to things to me, what would stand on my mind is going to South Africa
Mhm,
and giving talks internationally,
mhm,
getting recognition and prizes and promotion and mentoring and helping this next generation. And so what's so interesting is you being able to say no to this and then say yes to what you love.
mhm,
There's a world where you and your institution are both winning at the same time. And I think that's a really, I think it's a really, I think it's a really powerful place to be
mhm.
when you and the institution are both winning
Yeah, absolutely.
and you're able to do it your own way by saying
Mhm,
yes to what you love and say
mhm.
no to the rest.
Yeah.
Okay, so of your time together, what surprised you the most?
I think what surprised me the most is sort of how quickly I started to feel better.
Mm,
Because, you had said to me very early on, like, there's always a choice. Every situation has a choice.
yeah,
It may not feel like a good choice, but just knowing you have a choice
yeah.
takes sort of the power out of it. And so I think I use that all the time of like, there's always some choice. It may not be maybe choice between my third and fourth choice, but there's always something we can wiggle to make it feel better. And I think in starting to feel that whenever you start to feel you have options, you feel less trapped, and then you feel safer and you feel calmer, and it's easier to sort of come home at at the end of the day and let things go. Because like you said, I think there are times when, someone expresses they're unhappy with you and it just ruins your entire day or week or month. And that is not sustainable to live that way. When the other person often has forgotten about it 2 seconds later, they don't even remember that they said something. So I think really focusing on like, I always have a choice, and also that actually lots of other people are feeling this way too. Because the system wasn't designed for the way medicine is today. And so everyone's being squished and pulled. Um, so I think another thing that surprised me is I still deal with the same hard things at work. I deal with very sick children and sometimes, very complex situations. But I'm calmer about them. And I always could be calm in the moment, in the decision-making moment about the medicine, but I would often go somewhere and fall apart. And now I certainly am allowed to fall apart, but I can be calmer about it because I think I'm not as worried about threats or about, keeping my job. Um, as I used to be because I just know it's okay and that I'll just be okay.
So huge. Okay, so I think I met with someone recently who was like, I know it'll take me years to feel better. I've been in medicine for 15 years. It will take years to feel better. And so I think what you just said about it didn't take long, that it was fast, I think is something that people need to hear. So when you think about when you started coaching, how long did it take before you started to feel better?
I I'm going to say 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Not great, but definitely better. And knowing you have, I think I would refer to you as like the pop-off valve, knowing that you have the pop-off valve to sort of process the way things are happening and how you're reacting to things sort of lets you save it up for those times.
Hmm.
And it lets the rest of your day and week be calmer. And I think then you just function better. So I think that again, like prior to hearing about your coaching program, I sort of thought it's just me. Everyone else loves it. You know, everyone else makes it work in academic medicine. There's no other problems. It's just me. Then you sort of hear, oh, it's not just me and it's not just my field and it's not just this area of the country. It's everywhere and everything. You realize I'm not alone, and that too is very powerful to realize that someone doing private practice adult dermatology in another state actually has similar feelings to me about practicing medicine right now makes you feel really validated. And I think that's the other big piece that I haven't mentioned yet today is like just having someone give you that validation, like, of course you feel that way. Um, that makes all the difference in the world. And that's a quick difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the listeners, I want you to hear. So I can say it, but I think it's you want to hear. You're like, okay, Christine, of course. You'll feel better right away. But the idea, like 2 to 4 weeks from to the place of I'm starting to feel better in a noticeable way. I think that's when before coaching, it's just a reality. It doesn't take long when you have a process that works. It could be as few as 2 to 4 weeks. And I would say, like, even maybe even someone who joins next, when they hear this, what you've taught them, Debbie, is that you always have a choice and that you're not alone. And it's definitely not your fault. And there are people on your side. I think it's possible to feel better even before joining with what you shared with today. Okay, something you said is very common. I definitely had it when I was in medicine. I always thought I was about to be fired, which always had me just, I mean, of course, our nervous system would be a wreck. We'd be just scared all the time. And I love how you said that you figured out a way, you could recognize it and you figured out a way to be calm, even in a high stakes environment when you're dealing with precious children who are very, very ill. How are you able to take care of that part of you? Like, what does it look like to go from I'm scared to be fired to I can be calm at work and make very good choices?
Good question. I think a lot of it boils down to practice and saying things out loud. So we all have those things in our head that are scaring us to death or keeping us up. And you had also said to me at one point, nothing good happens at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like whatever thoughts are in your head are not going to be good. You just assume they're not good thoughts because nothing good happens at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I say that to myself and my trainees all the time. I'm like, nothing good, nothing, not getting any good phone calls then. And if you're waking up worrying at that point, it's nothing good. But I think really being being able to say, okay, we actually said, okay, what happens if you get fired? What happens? Do you survive? Like, yeah, you survive. Do you lose your home? No. And talking through like, what is that worst case scenario? And it's interesting because I feel like I actually give that to families a lot, like best case, worst case, most likely, but we're not so trained to do it with ourselves. So I think in coaching, practicing that, like, yep, that's very unlikely. But when someone just says to you, that won't happen, don't worry about it, that doesn't work. So saying, okay, you're worried about it. Okay, what if that happens? What do we do?
Yeah,
And knowing, like, having basically your plan B takes the threat out of it, makes it feel more like it
right.
might be a choice.
Right. Because if you know, okay, if I were to get fired, I would just go create another job.
Mhm.
Or I would negotiate with the people trying to fire me. And I'd say, hey, listen, look at this great CV. You just promoted me. We can make this work. That there are so many steps between 3 a.m. scared brain and actually
Yep.
being fired that and we have and we have influence over all of it.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that makes it just feel safer of like, your
Right.
brain still goes there sometimes, but
Mhm.
I think that when you express those kind of feelings to someone who hasn't been in academic medicine, they're like, you won't get fired. And it's, of course, a part of our brain knows that that is extremely unlikely, but
Mhm.
it again, more widespread than I would have thought that we're all sort of afraid of that at some
Yeah.
level. And
Yeah.
so,
Yes.
so knowing, so I'll handle it, you know, um,
Totally.
it makes it more
That's it.
manageable.
Everyone who's listening, it's that thought, that belief, that fact, I'm going to handle it no matter what. That's
Mhm.
what allows us to be calm.
Mhm.
That's what allows us to be calm in all these scenarios. And I think why we're all afraid is it's such a beautiful thing to spend a minute on too, because, well, because we're human, humans, and also because we really care about the work that we do. If we didn't care about this, it'd be like, okay, who cares? I'll go to the beach.
Exactly.
We really care about this job. And so why not just make ourselves feel safe in it so we can love it even more and do our best work?
Exactly.
Okay. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Tell us about if you may have said this, but I just want to say it in a different way because every time you're sharing so many amazing things. I want to ask it in a slightly different way. You could go back to 2.5 year, 3 years ago, Debbie, and you could just say, here's what you have to know. What would you want her to know?
Um, that's a great question. I would want her to know it does get better and it gets better without the whole system changing because I think that we are often sort of raised in an idealistic mindset of like, well, I'm going to change what doesn't work. And the reality is that we are often in systems that we can't change. We can change how we behave, but we can't always change the big system. And I think that makes it feel hopeless sometimes when you think, well, this is the system and I work in the system and I can't change the system. But knowing that actually how you feel does change over time, and your perspective changes and it takes the pressure off. And certainly would I love all of healthcare systems to be different? Yes, but even without that, I can be okay.
Mm,
And I think that's the biggest difference because I think prior to coaching, I thought if the system doesn't get better, I can't be better or
mm,
I can't feel better. And so it felt like there was no way to come out winning. There was no way to come out and feel good at the end of the day. But then realizing that even without the system changing, I'm changing um and improving and making my world better, that that's that maybe that does help change the system over time, but more so it allows me to function in that system without just abandoning medicine.
and that has been the theme of our case study so far, is people have said, I thought medicine was broken, I would never be okay in it. And the
Mhm.
whole thing, the best thing about coaching is you get to find a way to be okay in a broken system. And ironically, I think that's how the system changes, is that the individual people start making their job work for them, start loving it, saying yes to what they love, no to what they don't. That actually what moves the needle forward.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. And I love this too, that all feelings are temporary. I think we can change, we can evolve like that. That part is so flexible. Okay. Oh wow, that's a lot. That's such good wisdom. Okay, tell us, what are the wins you're most proud of if you're looking back at your 3 year journey? What stands out to you? Something you want to celebrate?
um I think accomplishing goals that I wanted to accomplish, and a lot of those goals were actually saying no to things or giving up things
Mm,
and saying like I don't have to finish this. So one of our sessions, I know we looked at my sort of big to-do list that I was like carrying forward week after week, month after month. And you were like, do you want to do that? And I said, no. And you're like, you can just take it off the list. You actually get to do that. And I closed out some like old protocols and old IRB things and just said, I don't want to do it. And one of the things I did was email a colleague about a project we had been sort of trying to do for like 5 or 6 years. And I said, I'm really sorry, but I don't want to do this anymore.
yeah.
And she wrote back and said, I can't believe you just said that. I don't want to do it anymore either, but I didn't know how to say that. And we like hugged it out next to
Oh
myself.
my gosh.
You know what? It's just
Wow.
not on our list anymore. I don't care. It wasn't a project
Wow.
that was going to help a lot of patients. It was sort of to publish something to publish it. And we both just said, you know what? Never mind. And that was like incredibly freeing. Like nothing bad happened. We just took it off our list and said, we're not doing this anymore.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I think one of the biggest wins has been like that, developing that ability to be like, I'm just not finishing that, right? Even I even now don't finish a book if I don't like it. And
Yeah.
I never used to
Yeah.
give myself that permission.
Yeah.
But just saying like, I don't actually have to finish this, and I can give it to someone else if they want it, or I can just end it for
Mm,
projects, for papers, for all kinds of things. And I think that is like that's incredibly freeing. And it's really not a skill that I think we're taught outside
no.
of coaching at all. We're really taught to finish everything. And I think not finishing is sort of a way of finishing, right? Of just
Mm,
saying it's over
mhm.
rather than it's finished or it's wrapped up in a bow. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's been really helpful, and it's been helpful in taking things off my plate. There's things I didn't want to do anymore. I can offer them to younger faculty if they want them, great. If they don't, I'm like, well, it's just not happening anymore.
Okay, that is, I want to put this on a billboard. Not finishing is still finishing. Some
Yeah,
things aren't meant to be all the way through to a paper form. Some
right.
things are an idea that just like that's all it was ever meant to be, an idea. Not because I think you're right. There's such a push in medicine to be a completer, and you don't get this far in medicine without being someone who always does. And it can be to our detriment if the thing we're forcing us ourselves to do is unhealthy or toxic or bad or very like not in alignment with our goals. It can be very damaging to us. So we want to keep the identity we are finishers because we are. And sometimes finishing is letting a project go when it's
Yeah,
time to let it
yeah,
go. That's freedom.
yeah.
And what I love, this is the butterfly effect. Like you told someone, I don't want to do it. And she's like, wait, I can do that
Me
too.
neither. Yeah.
Right. And it's just
Yeah.
like, that's how, and this is such an example. This is how we do change medicine, as we let people know, like, there is this other way. Wow. I am like, I'm blushing. I don't know if you can tell, but it's like my face is totally red
No,
because I'm
it's
just
thanks
lit
to you.
up by
I've
this.
learned all of these skills in coaching.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Okay. Anything else you want to say as we're like celebrating you
I think
and your
another big lesson that helps me many days is future me will handle that, because I think we
mm,
spend a lot of time worrying about something that might happen, and it also might not happen. And again, telling people don't worry about that is not a helpful tool. But saying like, okay, and if that happens, like whoever, future you will handle it when it happens.
mm,
And trying to make a game plan now for something that might happen in the future is not actually feasible. So
mm,
I use that a lot, I think, on a day-to-day basis of like, future me will figure that out. It's not happening right now. Because we spend so much energy worrying about things in the future.
mm. So this brings me to another question I was going to ask you, which was, what does it look like to cut back your hours, have more time for these other things that you love?
Mhm.
And this is a really common one is cutting back on the worry.
Mhm.
The worry itself can be very time consuming and very distracting. And so can you talk a little bit like if you were to kind of map out like what does it look like to cut back in academic medicine through coaching while keeping, doing everything you're required to do, making sure your job is safe. But what does it look like to cut back? Tell us about what is the impact of this not worrying all the time to be able to rely on future self.
Yeah, I haven't on like I haven't cut back any actual clinical time, as you know. But just cutting back on some of the nonsense gives you more time. And I think some of it is the worry. And for me, more of it was perfectionism, feeling like my notes had to be perfect. Um, or, something I was documenting had to be perfect because of the fear of lawsuits or the fear of just people thinking it wasn't perfect, and really letting go of some of that. Um, and I think also there, in my past, there were a lot of times when
Mm,
I would force myself to sit at a computer until XYZ was done, and realizing through coaching that I'm much faster when I'm in the right mindset. And so,
mm,
sort of transitioning from like, this has to be done by this time at this day, because lets me check the box, transitioning from that over to I know there are certain times of day when I'm faster at
mm,
notes. and I'm going to use those and do notes then. And then once the, wind is not with me, I am going to shift and do something else. Um,
Yeah.
and that has helped a lot too, because um, you don't always feel like I should be doing something else. I shouldn't be reading these papers right now because I actually should be doing notes, or I, shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
doing notes because it's the day that I'm supposed to be doing something else. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think like that permission of like, actually, I'm going to do what I'm most effective at when I'm most effective.
Mm,
Um, I think that helps remove a lot of the resentment, because I think the resentment also slows us down in terms of our work. Um,
right.
if we're sitting there angry that we have to be doing something, it makes it take longer, and it makes it harder and it takes more energy. But if, it's not that I have less work or that I have fewer
Mhm.
obligations, but I don't spend that time being angry about them.
Yeah. Because it is this like invisible piece where we're getting this, we're doing the same amount, we're doing the same work. But
Mhm.
if it's with this lens of if we're kind of holding this and I could be fired anytime, I could be sued at any time, someone could die anytime, it is so much harder to get work
Yeah.
done. And when we're able to be sick, create that safety, think at a higher level,
Yeah.
produce better notes, and they get close faster.
Mhm.
I think this is a common pain point for people who join is the charting piece. And your notes are probably one of the most complex because your kiddos have very extensive histories and I wonder what would you say to someone who's at the beginning of their coaching journey, how they could support themselves on the notes piece, the charting piece with coaching?
I think one of the most helpful things is a mantra that you and I developed, which was like, it just says C plus notes, and I have it on a sign next to my desk. And because for most of us, a C plus version of a note is still a really good note.
Right.
And realizing that a lot of the time we spend on formatting and on things that just don't matter, they truly don't matter. And unfortunately, over the last several decades, right? Notes have evolved from being for
Mm,
doctors to know what's going on with the patient. They're really a billing tool. And
mm,
so I think actually getting a little more educated about how the billing works and how what gets rejected was helpful for me to say, like, I'm doing
mm.
enough in my note, and I know I'm doing plenty to keep the patient safe and to document
Right.
what medically needs to be known. Then that takes some of the pressure off. I also was like in the early pilot in our center for using an AI scribe, and I was very skeptical, but I thought, okay, I'll do anything that might help. And
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
and so I think taking any of those opportunities, because charting, that is well known, right? Charting is like a big piece of burnout, and it's also something we all get threats about, like your charts aren't up to date. And it's difficult. And it only gets more complex. It doesn't get better over
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
Um, but I think using any possible tools to sort of make it better.
Mhm.
I think the other thing with charting that's hard is sometimes either social media, or I've heard other coaches be like, the trick is to get your charts done every single day. And the reality is that if you're in a hard profession, which we all are, sometimes you have hard days. And when you have a hard day, it can be really hard at the end of giving all day to sit there and do charts in a computer.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I used to hear that from sort of online podcasts and
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
talking about efficiency, being like, the trick is to always finish your charts that day. And that's just not realistic for me,
Yeah.
because at the end of a full clinic day,
Yeah.
I don't have the right mindset to finish charts.
Yeah.
I actually need to take a minute. Um,
Yeah.
and so even though I think on the business end, that's what everyone would love, that is just not always realistic.
Mm.
If you've, been on service, you've got inpatient notes, you've got outpatient notes, you've got all of these things building up. It's
Right.
actually just not, and it's not built into our schedules. So
Right.
I think like choosing which advice to take, but which advice to ignore also, and no, like that doesn't actually work for me.
Yeah.
Certainly, I always get my inpatient notes done, and if there are hard discussions, I document those as soon as possible. But other routine stuff, it can usually wait until I have the right time and the right
Yeah.
mindset, within reason, to get that done. So I don't have any magic about notes and the pressure of them, but I think the the few things I've learned are what I said. I would use any tools you can get. I would accept
Mhm.
less than perfect notes because we do not need to have perfect notes. Um, and I would say like everyone should focus on what works for you. And also, you've taught me this that what works for me one day doesn't have to work for me the next day. So I also find, especially on social media, there are a lot of like dogmatic advice.
Mm.
Um, um, I don't know, presentations out there of like, always do this. And I've realized there are days when I can do my charts the same day, and there are days when I can't. And there are days
Mhm.
when, I have a headache and looking at the computer for one more hour is not feasible. And there are days when I can sit at the computer for 7 hours. So, sort of really embracing whatever is working for me in that moment rather than making some rule for myself that then just makes me disappointed
Mm.
has been
That is
helpful.
so good. That is so good. Because I think even, yes, we all here get your notes done the same day. And that can actually be used against ourselves. And then we force ourselves to be in a space where we're not thinking clearly. And then we make a mistake where it takes twice as long. That actually that advice is it doesn't take room for us being human beings. And then being able to customize something for each of us. I think there's just so I love what you said. This is most effective to do it when I am most effective. And then and have some grace and support ourselves. Sometimes it's that day and sometimes it's the next day. But what the theme, the through line for you, Debbie, that I've heard that I've seen, and including today's talk, is I think when the priority is patient care, everything else sort of all the other pieces kind of fit together. When you're like, well, what is really most important for this patient? Yes, this is an important billing tool, and also me being able to be focused in the clinic, me being able to have a great mindset so I can see what's going on, so I can hear I can ask the questions I need to ask that really can help simplify things. Not every, so I think in medicine, we're taught so much that everything is a fire, which
Mhm.
really has it's a very exhausting process versus here's the priority, the patient care piece. And these other things, they were puzzles that come together as
Yep,
needed.
absolutely.
So good. This is interesting too, because most people would be like, what? You guys do help people with charting as a pathologist who never had it to chart. So how would you explain, like, how can a pathologist help with charting if she's
I
never done a
think
chart?
really, I think again, giving someone permission, first of all, the validation of like, yep, charting sucks. It sucks. Nobody likes it. That validation. Then I think the permission to do things that aren't perfect.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
that's big. And someone needs to give us that permission sometimes, another human being,
Mhm.
because it's really hard to give it to yourself. Um, and then I think talking through what works for me, realizing that like I'm really
Mhm.
resentful most of the time when I have to do charts on the weekends. However, if I have a really, really hard Friday and I'm giving lots of bad news,
Mhm.
I also know that trying to make myself stay there until 10 o'clock at night to finish all my charts is not actually healthy. And so I
Mhm.
do better if I walk away and give myself a break and say, those can wait. Those can wait.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
and so I think it's like it's the balance and sort of accepting a range of what we do. Meaning it's not that I always finish my charts the same day or I always have to do them on weekends. It's that sometimes I will choose to do them on a weekend. Sometimes I will choose to spend a certain amount of time of a weekend doing work because it will actually help me for next week. But it's a choice. And I think that's very powerful. Again, coming back to that, you have some choices because we don't have choices of whether to chart or not. But within charting, you have some choices,
Right.
right? Am I going to use
Right.
dot phrases for everything? Am I going to use
Mhm.
sentences or bullet points? Am I going to use AI scribe or something else? And so just reminding yourself that you have some choices and some control over it
Mhm.
helps.
Mhm. Yeah, so good. That might be the other question. I think so many of people who start in coaching, perfectionism is a thing that's just that they would point to as this perfectionism is making it hard for me to do my job or get my notes complete or running on time in clinic. Do you have any words you could say to someone who's just starting coaching? How can they help with their perfectionism? How can they support themselves in next steps, cutting back,
I
projecting their
think the,
career?
the perfectionism is hard, right? Because that's been like drilled into all of us to like have the
Hmm.
best note and have perfect punctuation and have everything. And certainly, those of us that took a lot of English classes, right? It feels wrong if we miss, a comma somewhere. But I think letting that go and coming back to what's the purpose of this, right? At this point, the purpose of most charts is for insurance billing. So if you
Mhm.
can achieve that purpose, the rest really doesn't matter. So
Mhm.
the first goal is for other people to know about the patient and keep the patient safe. And then the only other thing that the charts are for is for billing. So that perspective has helped. I think, from my standpoint, realizing that most of the billing reviews and things are happening by people who have no idea what I do. So when a note gets questioned or bill gets debated, that really has very little to do with how much work I put
Mm,
into it, and usually with some misunderstanding of the person trying
yeah.
to decode or recode things.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that helps, and I think perspective, right? And as much as, we encourage trainees to get notes done on time, I also said to people, like, nobody ever died from their note not being done. It's not good, and you certainly could get sued, but nobody died from that. And so,
Hmm.
like, perspective, again, I think perspective.
Oh, it's so good. Because so here's the pre-coaching, post-coaching. Pre-coaching, it came the perfectionist loop, what it could sound like is, oh, someone's gonna die, I'm gonna get sued, I'm gonna lose my job, I'm gonna get fired. And that stress is what really puts us in a loop of it taking longer to get the charts closed, for example. And the coaching we heard you say is you talk to yourself in a reassuring way. No one is gonna die. We're not losing our job. We're not being undermined by billing. It's just a misunderstanding I can clear up. That is that internal voice you have that's very strong, that reassures you and it's on your side. I think that's the gift of coaching that can take a perfectionist to someone who can do an even better job in fewer hours, like the same work, but in fewer hours, because we're not constantly feeling like we're about to be fired.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think like looking for perfection in medicine really paralyzes us sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to
Yeah.
make people happy, right? So I've been to your people pleasing meetings. Um, and really that I think that happens in medicine with women more than men, where we're people pleasers and we're trying to make everyone happy and we're trying to follow every rule. And it's just the system doesn't work like
Yeah.
that.
So liberating the people pleasing, perfectionism, getting your charts done, enjoying your life, burnout, like all of that can be supported with coaching.
Absolutely.
So tell us what changed in your life outside the hospital.
So I have more time. I definitely I feel like I have more money. Um, I I can't prove that, but it feels like I have more money. And some of that I think is coaching, is talking about what do I want to do with my money? What do I really need? What do I want versus need? Because I also think in medicine we're all kind of trained like put your head down and work, work, work. But at the end of the day, we also need joy outside of work. I've always traveled a lot, but I've traveled even more since I started coaching. Um, I've been to Africa. I'm going to Scotland to speak at a meeting in a few months. So I think realizing that I think one of the biggest changes is realizing that like I actually said no to things and the world didn't end. Nothing crashed. And they didn't like cast me aside and say, you're not worthy of anything. And if they do, I'll still be okay. So all of those things that make you feel secure, um, I've gotten through coaching.
What if saying no to what you don't like, saying yes to what you do,
Mhm.
makes it better? Like it's not, you're not, we're not just like the absence of firing. It's like the
Yeah.
way of making this job work for you.
Absolutely.
So good. Okay, so amazing. If you could go back to younger you who likely had some, I mean, maybe you had some reservations about joining coaching, what would you tell her? Because a lot of people who are listening might also be in the
Yeah.
same spot. What would you say to someone who has reservations at the beginning of their journey?
I think number one is it's worth every penny because I think at first you see it and you think like that's a lot of money, but it's actually a huge, and by huge I mean deep investment in your future. And um, I think I sort of jumped in and was like, I'm gonna hope this helps me change things, and it did. Um, and I think there's sort of always more work to do, so I probably will never stop coaching. So you won't be done with me. But I um I think I would also say it's incredible how far reaching it is, meaning
Mm.
it doesn't just help me on a day-to-day basis. It helps how I interact with trainees. It helps how I interact with superiors. It helps sort of on every level because it's just a different way of looking at the input and what's coming into your world every minute, and thinking through it in a different way. Um, I think because it's like framed on the professional world, it can affect us so quickly because coping in your job, feels better. But then it spills over into everything else, which is huge. I think it's also extremely unusual in medicine and probably in many careers to talk to anyone outside of your own job about your big goals because we just don't do that. You talk about them at your career conferences, maybe. Um, but when you have someone independent of your job talking about what do you want, it's actually a little scary and it's a little hard to sometimes know because most of us don't know what we would want. But it's incredible because then you actually get to think about what do I want? What do I want to do? Um, and then you get to go get it. And that's a huge gift from coaching. Because I think we spend so long in training, and that training, especially in the past, maybe it's better now, but especially in the past, sort
Mhm.
of taught us to like put your head down and do this, and you do this, and you do this. And in a lot of systems, we also see physicians working until the day they die or until right before they're dying. They don't want to retire or they can't retire or whatnot. And so I think realizing, like, yeah, I never wanted that, but I don't have to do that either.
Mhm.
Um, and sort of making bucket lists, even. It sounds silly,
Mhm.
but I think that making bucket lists and realizing like I can do these now actually
Yeah.
is huge. So I think for anyone considering joining coaching, consider it harder. And think about your crappy days and then think about like, what if they were better? What if they were even just 10% better? But what if they were 90% better? Um, and what if you didn't have to spend the time being upset about those things? Because we spend a lot of time,
Mm.
angry or upset
Mhm.
for things that just don't matter. Of course, we're always going to be upset when something bad happens to a patient. We're always going to be upset at a bad
Yeah.
outcome, and
Yeah.
that's totally appropriate. But being upset at the system, I feel like I wasted a lot of time being angry at a system.
Mm.
And
Well, you didn't
I'm
know
done
there
with
was
that.
an option back then. And for the
Right,
listeners, like when we
right,
don't know there's another option at the
right,
beginning before coaching, it's like either blame the system or blame ourselves. So
right.
I want to say younger you were right to blame the system because the alternative would have been so much more painful.
Yeah.
And then in coaching, we just get to tear apart, okay, in this broken system, let me find my path towards.
Mhm.
What do you think? So I think you said something really interesting. It was kind of hard and scary to think about what I want at the beginning. What could you give, like, if you could go back in time and give her something when it was hard and scary, what would that be?
I think the idea that like actually you're supposed to want things besides your
Mm.
career. You're
Yeah.
actually supposed to want those other things. And
Mm.
I don't know I can't count how many times you've said to me, like, well, what if that's exactly where you're supposed to be and exactly what you're supposed to be thinking? And
Mm.
that, again, that permission and validation of like, this is actually what you're supposed to be doing now. And so I think it's sort of instead of a midlife crisis, it's like a midlife awakening the other way. All right, like I've mastered, like I know how to practice medicine. I know what to do. Obviously, we're always learning new things, but in general, I know what I'm doing. I don't need to get another degree if I don't want to. Um, and so I don't think we're really taught to consider an alternative besides working more. That's really
Yeah.
that's what we're taught is work more, or we see the people who leave medicine, but we don't see a balance anywhere.
Hmm. So permission to want, permission to say no, permission to say yes.
Mhm. All of them. Yes.
So good. So good. You're right. It's not told to us nowhere ever. And it is definitely looking back at your journey. That was such a big part of it is this permission piece that I
Yes.
wish every woman physician to have that.
Yeah.
So what's next for you?
I'm still in coaching, as you know, and like I said, I won't leave. Um,
Please don't. I am too. I will always have a coach. Why wouldn't I?
exactly. Um, I don't know. I'm doing things like I'm renovating my apartment, planning more trips, um,
Yeah.
dealing with health stuff, but I feel like I'm doing it all in the way I can be best supported, which
Mm.
is, which makes it different than if you're doing it with no support.
Oh, totally. Yes. Yes. I think that's such a big piece to underscore in coaching is like, how can I support myself
Mhm.
in every season, every piece, every place I go? Who would you recommend Next Level Freedom to? Who do you think it's a good fit for?
I, I mean, everybody, but I think more so, I think people who feel like they're experiencing burnout, which is everyone I know. Um, but I do for real. Everyone who feels burnt out or tired of things, anyone who is thinking of leaving medicine,
Mm.
because I see that and I don't blame people at all and I fully support them, but I see a lot of amazing, young, brilliant people leaving medicine because the system's broken. And I don't blame them at all, but I just wish they had more support before they had to make that choice. And I think a lot of times they're
Mm.
making that choice to stay healthy and safe themselves, but I wish there were um more opportunity for people considering leaving,
Right.
um,
Right.
join, because I think that's huge. And I think people who are sort of like me, like mid-career and not happy, but actually think they might still want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what maybe held me back. I didn't know that much about coaching, but I think what probably held me back before was thinking like the choice is leave or stay. And
Mm.
realizing there were a million variations in between those was eye-opening and really like let me figure some things out about
Yeah.
what brings me joy, what doesn't. There are things that I don't like to do that I still have to do, of course. But giving up some things that I didn't like to do is also an option.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so so I think I would obviously recommend it to everybody, but I think um I think specifically um mid-career and early career that's already feeling like the push and the pressure and the burnout,
Mm. Yeah.
it can make a huge difference.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. What do you, question that might come up, I think just curious what you would say about this is, so I was in medicine for 26 years, academic medicine. I retired a few years ago. I'm full-time in my coaching practice. I could see someone saying, well, how can someone who's out of medicine help me stay in medicine? What would your answer to that be?
Oh, I think that's actually like the perfect solution for a coach because I think because you were in it, right? And the people who can't understand are the people who never did it.
Mm.
But you've
Mhm.
seen both sides and you're not telling anyone else to do what you did. You're just saying, here, you have other choices and here's how you can change your outlook or your approach
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
your day to day. So I think to me, it's like the best of both worlds because
Mm.
you actually picked up and went and did something else. So that's an inspiration. But you were in it. You weren't,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not like looking at us like, well, yes, I'm sure charts are hard, just finish them. Or
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure that,
Yeah.
yeah, the boss is mean. They can't say that, or they didn't, I'm sure they
Mhm.
didn't mean it, or go to HR, right? Though all of those things, like you get that those aren't the solution in this type of system sometimes.
Yeah.
They might be, but they're not always. It's not sort of
Mhm.
like a regular old S&P company. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
so I think to me, like you were the perfect fit for me.
I love that. Wow, I didn't think you I did, had no idea. I love that answer. And then my answer to that is is that the coaching is not about me. So I never try to make someone be like me. The coaching is always about what is it that you want, and I'm going to show you how to get there real fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else you want to add that we didn't cover?
I'm grateful that I found you. I'm grateful I listened to the Grand Rounds. I would say for anyone considering it, like sign up for, a one-on-one to chat and then see how you feel. I think I cried through our first one and many after that, but definitely our first one. But I think it was sort of crying from relief that like, oh,
Yeah.
someone actually is like putting words to what I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Tears can be a very for everyone out there, like tears are a sign that we're in the right direction.
Mhm.
So normal in coaching to be like a confirmation. Okay, this is what I need to hear. Debbie, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
your celebrations. I am sure this is going to help so many people out there who
I hope
don't
so.
know there's a choice of
I hope.
options. Even in a top tier academic center, there's always a choice. You can love your job again. You're such an example of that.
Thank you.
And now, listeners, I want to say something just for you. If you want the exact tools, frameworks, and scripts, make sure you're at a brand new live 3-part masterclass series. You'll get everything you need to know to get to part time hours, full doctor pay in under 90 days. And here's something else that's really exciting. At the live masterclass series, doors are going to open to Next Level Freedom. It's my lifetime physician coach training program where we are done sacrificing our families for our careers. We only open once a year. Next time you join is summer 2027. Do not miss this chance to get your 100K raise and your part time hours. Never miss your kids' soccer game again. Go to show notes now. I'll see you there.